Today I want to teach you how to dimension. And so we've already gone through our notes, and our notes are attached to our activity sheet. There's even a slide in there that basically tells you how to do this, just as I'm going to do here today, but through a video so you can visually see it. All right, so first thing is, once again, we go back to observing the object, its width, height, and depth, and its overall shape. And so what I'm going to do off to the side is I'm going to go ahead and write W for width, D for depth, H for height, and then M for miscellaneous. Now, what is a miscellaneous measurement? All the other measurements are going to be either location or size measurements, which we talked about in the lesson, and they're going to be either horizontal dimensions, vertical dimensions, dimensions at angles, but miscellaneous dimensions are going to be things like circumference and diameter, angle, things like that. And so we are going to have a little bit of that here in the drawing today, but we tend to do those last. So I'm just going to work my way from top to bottom with depth, height, and then miscellaneous. Okay, there's several rules in which we are to follow. I want to try to break that down here in this video lesson. So I always start with the front view because it's the most detailed view. It shows width, okay, and I can see width from left to right this way, and then I can see height up and down this way. Make sure that we're practicing, our rules, and that we want to make sure that the drawing is fully dimensioned. Make sure that we're not duplicating, dimensioning the same edges but in a different view, or the same surfaces but in a different view. We also want to make sure that we're not dimensioning from hidden lines. We want to make sure we're using extension lines and dimension lines. Again, all that we talked about in the lesson, and that we're following that 1-2-1 method. And again, that's just something I made up. I just kind of come up with on my own, but you'll hear me say it here in the video. Hopefully that helps you. If that confuses you, then maybe just ignore that. All right, so to do the width, I want to start off with the upper left-hand corner, so up here, and I'm going to draw my extension line. And so I think maybe I'll do this in a different color today, just so you can see it, because I did draw my projection lines a little darker than I normally would have so you could see them. And so I want the extension lines and dimension lines to stand out. So I want to do them in a different color. Obviously, you're going to do all this with your 6H pencil. So again, it is extremely crucial that your construction lines and projection lines are very, very lightly drawn. And if for some reason they're not, before you start dimensioning, take your eraser and don't erase them entirely, but lighten all those lines so that you can, create your extension and dimension lines and that they stand out and make sense. So I'm going to do all my widths. I'm going to project them up, right, up in this direction. So from the front view, again, I'm projecting from the front view because it's the most detailed view, and you should be able to get all the dimensions down without having to dimension something from another view, depending on how complex the drawing is. So I'm going to start in this corner. I'm just going to draw a dot just so you can see it right there. I'm going to start in that corner, and I'm going to skip out one grid block and draw a line up. Okay? Like that. All right. And then what I want to do is I want to pop my ruler out just so you can see it. And I'm going to start in this corner and all the way across the surface from top to bottom. So from the top of the surface to the bottom, I want to drag my ruler across. And once I run into a feature, I'm going to stop and dimension it. Now that feature could be the object changing shape like it does here. It could be the start of an angled surface. It could be a rectangular notch cut out maybe down here underneath. It could be the hole. All kinds of things are features. Features make up the visible edges of the object, okay? So I'm just going to take my time, work my way across, and once I run into a geometric feature, in this case it happens to be right here, where the object changes shape from going horizontal to vertical. So this change in shape, I need to dimension that. So I want to take and skip out one grid block, because I did that here. That's my 1, right? So I'm going to skip up the same amount, one grid block, and draw a line extra long for now. I'll come back and maybe do a little erasing. Okay, let's go ahead and put our dimension line in. Now, this surface is the outermost edge along the top of the top view. So I've got this edge and this edge, and this is the outermost when it comes when looking at both of these, which is good. And so I'm going to go from the outermost edge. I want to go up 2 grid blocks, 1 and 2, and I want to put my dimension line in here. Now remember from our notes, a dimension line is a line with a gap in it somewhere. It could be the middle, doesn't have to be. And it has real small, tiny, filled in arrowheads like that. Okay, so this is where the 2 comes in. So far I've got a 1 block gap, and then the dimension line is 2 blocks up from the outermost edge. And then last but not least, I want to have the extension line extend 1 block past the arrowhead. So that's going to be a 1, 2, 1. So let me grab my eraser. I'm going to erase a little bit of this, like that. So let me say that again. This is my 1, 2, 1. I got a 1-inch gap here. I got a 2 block gap here, and a 1 block past. Okay, 1 block past. Okay. Okay. Now I need to continue on. So I stopped right here on the right edge of my ruler. I want to continue on to the right. I keep going and I run into my circle. Well, that's the left edge of my circle. I'm not going to dimension edge to edge. Remember, everything we do with a circle or an arc or an ellipse or an elliptical arc, we do all that from the center. So I'm going to dimension the center of that circle right there. Okay, so what I'm going to do is skip up roughly 1 grid block. Okay, from the end of the center line. Okay, so here's the end of my center line. I'm going to skip up roughly a grid block, and I'm going to drag my extension line up like this. And I want to have it end in the same place as all the others. Okay, remember now we are doing what's called chain dimensioning, and so every dimension is a chain link like in a real chain, and they have to connect, and they're going to be all at the same elevation. Let me say that again, they're going to be all at the same elevation. Okay, so now I need to go in here and put my dimension line. Now I have only 2 blocks in here, so that means I probably don't have enough room for my dimension and my arrowhead. So the arrowheads will go to the outside. So that means this arrowhead is going to work for both this dimension and this one over here. Okay. Then I got to put an arrowhead over here, but I don't want to do that yet because I'm not sure if I want to have the room. So maybe what I need to do is just come through here. And I know that I want to have a dimension in this space. Let's put the last extension line up here so we can get a full look at all the dimensions across here. So that's going to be from that point, okay? So from the right edge of the ruler. So I'm going to skip out 1 grid block from the point I'm dimensioning from, so 1 grid block, and I'm going to dimension that like this. Okay, again, all the extension lines that are working together and the dimensions that are working together, all these lines end at the same spot, and they all have a 1 block gap here, a 1 block gap from the end of the center line. Okay. So now I'm left with the problem that I don't have enough room in between either one of these spaces for both arrowheads and measurements. So what I'm going to do is put an arrow out here. We talked about this in our lesson. And this arrowhead's going to work for both this dimension and this dimension. So I'm going to go ahead and put my sizing in here. And so I'm going to, every grid block is 1/4 of an inch. So that means this dimension over here is going to be 1/4, 2/4, 3/4, 4/4, or 1 inch. This is going to be 2/4 or 1/2. Make sure you always write your fractions as reduced fractions. And this is 1/2. And so when I get done, I have put all the measurements in line with one another. Okay, so in line. And they're all moved up away from the object, the proper distance. All the extension lines are correct. And then all the widths are done. I don't have any more widths. I can cross that off. Okay, next let's do depth. Well, we can see depth in two places. We can see it from this point to this point in the right side view, or this point to this point in the top view. No, the same thing, so it doesn't matter which view that you extend the dimension from. So I'm going to go ahead and do it in the right side view. I'm going to start in this corner. So I'm going to skip out one grid block and draw my line. So remember, this is the 1 from the 1 to 1. This is the 1. And then I want to take and work my way across the surface. I'm not running into any notches, angled surfaces, or anything like that. I get all the way to the edge. And so I'm just going to have one measurement over here. This one's pretty easy. Again, make your arrows nice and little, fill them in, okay? So let's take a look at that 1-2-1 method again. I got a 1-inch gap. The dimension line is 2 blocks away from the outer edge of the object, and then the extension line extends 1 block past. So that's a 1, 2, 1. So I'm just continuing that throughout the whole drawing. 1, 2, 1. All right, how wide is or how deep is this? Let's see, it's 1/4, 2/4, 3/4, 4/4, or 1 inch. And that's it. I don't have any other depths. I can cross that off. Okay, now let's do the heights. So I can see height over here on the right side view if you follow my cursor, or over here in the front view. Now, one idea is to try to group all of our measurements together. And so because of that, I'm going to go ahead and extend the heights off to the right, off of the front view. So I always start in the lower right-hand corner where I'm circling. I'm going to do my 1-2-1, so I'm going to leave a 1 block gap like this. Okay, and then my dimension line will go here 2 blocks away, and then I'll have 1 block of the extension line extending past. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and work my way up. So I'm going to turn this like this. I want to work my way up. So I'm going to start at the bottom, and as I start working my way up, I run into my hole. Okay, and I'm not going to dimension the edge. I want to dimension it from its center, just like we did when we did the width. Okay, so I need to extend that out. So I'm going to do something like this. Okay, so my center line was a little bit long, and so maybe if I go in and just kind of clean that up a little bit, something like that. Okay, so I have that little bit of a gap there. My center line does not end on the object line. We can't have that, but we do have that little gap in here. And quite honestly, if you actually connected that like this and over here on this guy as well, that's fine too. You can do it either way. Okay, this can just be an extension and extends out. Okay, now you can go ahead and put your dimension line in here, so we can do that. So again, we've got our 1, and I'm going to do our 2. Now it's only 2 grid blocks. So I know that when it's 2 grid blocks, I probably don't have the room for the arrowheads and the measurement. So I'm going to put this one on the outside, but I don't know what's happening in here, so I'm going to pause. And I think I'm going to go ahead and put all my extension lines out first. Okay, so I've got this extension line from the edge to the center, from the center to this edge, because that's the next geometric feature I run into. So I can extend this out. And then I want to go from that edge all the way up to the top of the object, because this is the next geometric feature I run into. And so remember that when we extend these extension lines, they're going to be one block gap from the point in which you're dimensioning from. So where I'm circling, I want to skip out one grid block from that spot and draw this out. Now again, do you delineate these extension lines and dimension lines? Yeah, a little bit with your 6H pencil. That's fine. Okay. But again, we're not going to use our 2H pencil. We're not going to make them super dark and thick. We just want them to stand out from the construction and projection lines. Okay, so now back to our dimension lines. So I want to go 2 blocks, right? So 2 blocks. So I've got my 1 block gap, 2 blocks for my dimension line, then extension line extends 1 block past. So I need, let's see, I got this arrowhead on the outside here. I can't put it on the outside on this side because it gets in the way of this dimension, but I can put it over here. Okay, so that means this arrow is going to work for this measurement, and this measurement. Okay, so let me put the other one in here. Okay, and let me go ahead and put my measurements. So we've got 1/4, 2/4, 3/4, 4/4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's 2 inches. This is going to be 1/2. And this here is going to be 1/2. Okay, so now my heights are done. Last but not least is my miscellaneous. Okay, my miscellaneous. So do I have any round holes, any curved surfaces? Well, I do. And so that's going to be a miscellaneous. I have a hole, and anytime we have a hole, we always label it as its diameter. If we have a curved surface, we'd label it as a radius. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit on my circle. And so I want to practice what I taught you in the lesson, and that is the proper way to put the dimension down on here. And so it doesn't matter where you put the measurement, it's not going to fit between the views here, between the views here, or between the views here, where we put all of our linear dimensions, and we were supposed to do that. But I'm going to have to put it out here on the outside somewhere. Okay, we want to try to avoid putting any measurements in the views because it'll just muck up the view. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and put it down here. I'm going to put my line through here and put it down here out of the way. So how do we do diameter dimension? We draw a line from the edge of the circle through the center to the opposite edge, and we keep going. Maintain that angle, whatever angle that is. And we put a little straight line on the end. And then because it's diameter, the symbol is circle with a line or slash. And then whatever size that is, and this happens to be 1/2 of an inch. Okay. Then I'm going to zoom in a little bit. I've got to put some arrows. So I'm going to put an arrow here and an arrow here. Okay, and so that's indicating that my measurement is measuring from this edge through the center of this edge, and we know that that's diameter. We also now have learned that that's the diameter symbol. Okay, there are no other miscellaneous measurements. I can cross that off, and now my drawing is complete.